Hi, everybody. In case you don't know me, my name is Angie Vishayanan, and I am the founder of Leg Up Legal. We provide a prospective law student mentoring program that connects pre-law students to lawyers for mentoring so they can learn a little bit more about what the legal profession is all about to figure out if law school is really going to be right for them. And we started doing these free Zoom meetups every Tuesday and Thursday at noon Central Time during the lunch hour so that people could just connect with other students who are going through this crazy period at the same time, and also connect with attorneys and folks where you can learn a little bit more about the law school admissions process, what law school is actually like, and what the legal profession is like. And we've been doing these all throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've been getting students from all over the United States. And every week I invite in a new attorney guest speaker or an admissions person who comes in and tells you a little bit more about what this world is like. So this week I'm very happy to have Steve Schwartz with us from LSAT Unplugged. Steve is an LSAT coach, and he also runs his own blog and YouTube channel and podcast. And he has tons of great resources for people who are looking for advice on the LSAT. So I will let Steve take it away.
Hey, Angie. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's great to connect with you once again. So for those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I run the LSAT blog. I also host the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel and podcast. As Angie said, I've been teaching the LSAT for quite a while now, since 2005, actually. I got into this back when I was on my own LSAT and law school admissions journey as a pre-law. It took me an entire year, but I ended up getting a 175 after a lot of struggle along the way. Started teaching the exam shortly afterwards. Never ended up applying to law school because I really just got so fascinated with this exam and so obsessed with it. It's so complex. I have so much respect for the people who make it, and in just the level of complexity and detail in those exam questions. It's truly remarkable. And so I've been teaching the exam ever since. In 2008, and never ended up applying to law school myself. In 2008, I started the LSAT blog, where I've since posted well over 1,000 articles on everything LSAT and law school admissions. Then a couple of years ago, I got really into video. So I created the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel, as well as the LSAT Unplugged podcast, where I'm releasing new episodes daily, if not multiple times a day, on everything LSAT and law school admissions. Last year, I spent a lot of time covering the recent changes from the LSAT being paper to digital. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic, the LSAT has moved online. So it's now an online digital format rather than a tablet, as with the digital. It's now on your computer with the Flex. So I put some resources in the chat here all about the Flex, an LSAT Flex FAQ, an LSAT Flex playlist, as well as an easy LSAT cheat sheet PDF download, plus my link tree where I've got links to a wide variety of LSAT resources. Now, I suppose I could answer a couple of general FAQ I get often about the Flex. What is it? Is it easier? Is it harder? How does it work? How should you prep differently? And feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll do what I can to work them into this conversation as well. So the Flex is different in nature. Although the content of the exam has not changed at all, the format is different. So you've still got games, reasoning, reading comp. Everything is of equal difficulty. There's one logical reasoning section on the Flex, though, rather than two. So people will ask me, how does that change things? Is that LR section harder? Good news is no, it's not harder in any way. It's the same difficulty as any other logical reasoning section. But the weighting of the sections has changed. Used to be that logical reasoning was half the exam, or 2 out of 4 sections. Now it's only 1 out of 3 sections, because the exam now has only one section of each of games, reasoning, reading comp. Meaning that logical reasoning has diminished in importance just a little bit, since every question is weighted the same, and now reading comp with the most questions is actually now the most difficult section of the exam. Now, we've had a few LSAT Flex administrations already. It was administered in May, June, July, and now the end of this month in August, it will be Flex once again. I expect that any day now, and probably just after we get off this call, LSAC will announce sometime very soon that the October LSAT will in fact be a Flex, as we're all highly expecting it to be. And so if you're taking the LSAT pretty much anytime in 2020, chances are you'll be taking a Flex. And so that means you want to prep accordingly. 3 sections, not 5, meaning there's no second logical reasoning section, and there's no unscored experimental section. So 3 sections. Endurance matters less, but each question matters more. And if you're not super comfortable in reading comprehension, you might want to spend a little bit of extra time there just because reading comprehension now is, of course, weighed a bit more heavily than it otherwise would be. You also want to do your practice tests in the Flex format. And LSAC has put together a software program called Law Hub, a subscription service where for $99 a year, you get over 60 exams in the digital/LSAT Flex format, the same exact software, meaning there's a highlighting function, underlining, you can increase or decrease the text size, the line spacing, all of that you can adjust, which is cool. So you want to get used to that. And they have the vast majority of exams on that Law Hub subscription service platform. Now, if you're here for this call today, you're probably taking the LSAT sometime soon and it's on your horizon. So a couple things you should know going forward, starting with the August LSAT Flex, there are some new LSAC policy changes. First off, there's a new score preview option going forward, meaning that for first-time test takers only, you can see your score before deciding whether to cancel. But that's for first-time test takers only, meaning if you have ever sat for the exam before, even if you canceled your score, you're not a first-time test taker. But if you are first-time, you get to see it before deciding whether to cancel, which in reality isn't a huge deal because law schools, with very few exceptions, do not average multiple LSAT scores. They only take the highest score, meaning there's always a reason to retake. And you should not necessarily cancel your score because even if it's lower, no big deal. And if it ends up being higher than you hoped or expected, well, that's fantastic because now you've got a higher score on record. There is a fee for this service. It's $45 if you sign up for it and pay for it prior to your LSAT, and it's $75 if you decide later. And so I'm not really sure why they need to charge such high fees. I wish they wouldn't, but it is what it is. It's well worth that investment if it gives you even the slightest peace of mind. Also, starting with the August LSAT Flex, there is a new writing sample requirement, meaning you must complete the writing sample before they will release your score. If you don't complete the writing sample, you're not getting your score back. So don't delay, don't forget. And starting with August, you can actually complete it prior to the LSAT itself, meaning up to 8 days prior, you can go online and get it out of the way. Might not be your top priority because after all, it's not score compared to the actual LSAT, but you may want to do it as a break or just 3 days or so after the exam, you could do it then too, totally fine. I wouldn't wait that much longer because you don't want to forget or for it to potentially delay your score. And so I wouldn't be doing it 7 a.m. the morning scores are released when scores come out at 9 a.m. because they might not process it or update their systems in time. But those are a couple of policy changes to be aware of. The last one I'll add is retake limits. There are new LSAT retake limits reinstated. For a couple of years, there weren't any retake limits at all, period, meaning you could take it an unlimited number of times. Then they instituted new ones last year, meaning 3 times in one testing year, testing cycles running from June to May of the following year, 5 times in 5 years, 7 times for life. And if you get a 180, you can't take it again, as long as you have a current score on record. Now, they removed those limits for the LSAT Flex administrations up to this point. So the May, June, July, and August LSAT Flex tests, those do not count towards retake limits. But starting with October, whether it's a flex or not, retake limits are reinstated. These don't affect that many people, but they're still good to be aware of. And I'm happy to address follow-ups on why that's the case and such, but I'm just giving you the lowdown on that for now. So that's my general overview of everything, but I'm happy to go deeper on any of it.
Holy moly, things have changed since
yeah, lots of changes. Lots of changes.
So different. That's so different. Thank you so much for that preview of everything, Steve. So I wanted to ask you, what are some of the horror stories that you're hearing of things that people should be doing to avoid kind of the bad results?
Yeah, great question. So I didn't get into any of that, but that's an important question as well. So there have been some issues, of course. Anytime there's a new platform, a new technology, there are going to be things that don't go properly. Biggest thing I'll say is internet connectivity. So the Flex overall is a more pleasant experience for most people, but that's because you're doing it from the comfort of your own home or an office somewhere where you have a good internet connection. There's no testing center though. You're not doing it in person. So want to make sure your internet's good. Meaning if your Wi-Fi is shaky, get that taken care of in advance. And if you're on the fence, if you're not sure whether it's good enough or not, take care of it because there have been a number of people who had issues on test day because their Wi-Fi went out a little bit and then the proctors things are kind of up to their discretion with ProctorU, which is the company administering the exam. So if there's any question at all about your technology, meaning your device or your internet, or if your home environment's too noisy, reach out to LSAC because they can actually reimburse you for taking it at a hotel. They will pay up to $125 for you to take it at a hotel if your home environment's not suitable, like if there's kids or other family members who might interrupt you or make noise, or roommates or such, and you just don't want to deal with that. LSAC's paying for it. Why not take advantage of it? Go take it at a hotel and address that issue. And if your device is not suitable, like if you don't have a computer that works well, or you're just using a Chromebook, that's not going to work with the LSAT Flex software. So reach out to LSAC and they will actually lend you a tablet you can take it on. You'll just mail it back to them afterwards, but at least that addresses that. So they really are committed to accessibility and they don't want any of those things to be a barrier.
That's awesome. So how should people be prepping for the LSAT Flex as opposed to the usual LSAT? Do you have any tips for people who are taking this new version?
Yeah, sure. Well, like I said, the content of the exam has not changed at all. So all your previous materials on games, reasoning, reading comp, the details of those question types, all of that's unchanged. What does change though is the format. So simulating test day conditions. Don't do your practice tests out of books and don't do them on a tablet, because for the Flex, you'll be doing it on a computer. Now, obviously, those of you taking August, you've known it's Flex for a while, but October and November, it's pretty likely they're going to be Flex. I can't say 100% until LSAC says, but I'd say odds are 99% for October, maybe 95% for November. So expect Flex, but be ready for a potential change, meaning that you want to have some 5-section exams that you could do, but in the short term, I wouldn't even be doing full-length exams at this point. I'd be focusing more on the foundation and individual section pacing and timing and such. But get used to the software. Get Law Hub. Over 60 exams for $99 a year. It's a pretty good value compared to getting those books of 10. So I would do your practice tests and practice sections out of that.
What was that that you recommended again? Law Hub?
Yeah, Law Hub, also known as Official LSAT Prep Plus. It's a subscription service provided by LSAC, and that's really the only platform that has a software identical to what you'll be doing on test day.
Got it. And that's available through the LSAC website?
Yeah, it is. And I saw we got a question about Law Hub only being 3 sections. Unfortunately not. So Law Hub is a 4-section exams, not 3. So you'd want to use their self-paced mode and skip one of the logical reasoning sections. And I get a lot of questions about raw score conversions for the Flex, because the published exams assume 4 scored sections, not 3. And LSAC, unfortunately, has not released any information on those raw score conversions. So there are a variety of estimation tools out there. I even have one I'll link in the chat, but it's really more about just getting a sense of your overall accuracy rather than converting to a score out of 180. As much as you want that score out of 180, they're not giving it, unfortunately. So just make your best rough estimate.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. So have you run into any significant differences between, I guess, questions or anything that you've seen are different from the LSAT Flex and the normal LSAT? Like any certain questions that seem to be more heavily tested, or no?
Not really, actually. They really don't want to throw any curveballs into the mix here, because they're understanding for students that it's a new format this year. It's a difficult time in general for folks during COVID, and so much uncertainty in general about how law school is going to be, how undergrad's going to be, how everything's going to be, right? So we don't know how long this is going to drag on. So they're really, it being Flex alone is enough of a curveball. They don't want to add more confusion or difficulty into the mix. So what we've seen has been very standard. And actually, the questions they're using are previously undisclosed exams they administered in the past. So what folks did for the July LSAT, it could have been an undisclosed exam from February 2015, or it could have been an overseas administration from 2017, or a Sabbath observers test from 2018. So it's all the same exact questions. They're just kind of mixing and matching sections from those exams. And of course, 3 sections that are scored, not 5 administered or 4 scored as it was. So they're not looking to confuse people. And they have confirmed, and law schools have also confirmed, that they're treating this no differently than a regular LSAT, meaning that, let's say, a 165 on the Flex is the same as a 165 on the actual. And I actually have seen, strangely enough, I've seen more variation on test day performance than I have for previous administrations. So some people are doing a lot better on the Flex, some are doing a lot worse. As for why that is, it's hard to say. I think it could be people's stress and nerves around doing things on the Flex format with ProctorU versus doing it in person at a testing center. Some people feel weird about the online proctoring. Others get stressed about taking it in a testing center with a bunch of other people around. And so the test may or may not play to your strengths or weaknesses there, but that's one thing that could have an impact.
I was going to ask, have you seen your students that have taken the LSAT multiple times, if there's been larger swings on this?
Yeah, there have been larger swings, and that's kind of scary, but it's also kind of good depending on which way it swings, obviously. And so, again, I would suggest doing practice tests online with Law Hub to at least minimize the differences from what it's like for you out of the books.
So I saw a couple more questions in the chat box. Charlotte says, I've been unable to test if my Mac is compatible with ProctorU. I've been told that I will receive a ProctorU account in the next couple of weeks. Will this allow me enough time to check to see if
Yeah, so if you want to test out your system, that's a great question. I'm glad you raised that, Charlotte. You can test out your equipment. Go to testitout.proctoru.com, and you can, with hyphens in the URL there, test it out with hyphens in between. Go on there. You can even go on there now, but I would really go on there a few days prior to the actual exam so they can check your equipment. There's an automated system check there that you can do 24/7 anytime without even another person on the other end. But if you want to actually connect with a ProctorU employee so they can look deeper into your computer system, do it. That way they're not doing it on test day and you're in and out much more quickly. So they can check for whether your system is up to their standards in terms of running their software and everything for their security purposes. And they can even you mentioned that you have a Mac. That's important because there's one operating system, the Mac OS Catalina, that they have to disable a certain setting there in order for their security system to work. Because basically they're doing a screen share on your computer to make sure you've got nothing else open. And so look at that in advance. You can actually connect with a rep so they'll take over your computer for a moment and look and make sure everything's good to go.
Awesome.
And as for making a ProctorU account, don't make one yourself. LSAC will make one for you using your LSAC registered email. But there's another question about using what's the enrollment name of the institution. Don't even be touching that. LSAC will take care of all of that for you. If you have a previous login from a previous Flex, it'll be the same one, but you don't need to enroll on there in advance. They'll take care of it right before scheduling a time opens up.
Okay. Has the LSAT Flex impacted the LSAT Writing at all? Is there any difference?
Great question. So the writing actually was already in online administration starting with June 2019. So the test prior to the initial digital LSAT last year, they moved the writing online with the same system with the proctoring and such. So that's been the same since June 2019. As I mentioned, the policy change now, though, is that you must do an LSAT writing before they will even release your score to anybody, whether to you or whether to law schools.
And in Law Hub, is there a writing section that you can practice on?
In Law Hub itself, I don't think so. I don't think so for that.
Jenna asks, I'm living abroad and I'll be taking the LSAT in October in Europe. Are European LSATs expected to be flexed for October as well, or are the abroad LSATs essentially the same as those administered in the US?
That's a great question, and that's kind of actually an open question. So regarding European versus being flex or not, if the US is. And so obviously the situation is pretty different at this point in the US than in other countries. So I could imagine a scenario where it's flex in the US, but digital or paper elsewhere. So let's say I imagine all of North America will be the same, but I could see them doing paper in the UK and the rest of Europe and doing flex in America. Or maybe they'll do flex everywhere. It's really difficult to say one way or another. I'm sure it's an open question even at LSAC right now. But as for the content of the exam or the difficulty level, it will be the same difficulty level regardless of where you take it, but it may be different test forms. And even actually for, let's say, the July LSAT Flex, it wasn't just one test form. So you might have had a logic game about clowns, somebody else had a logic game about monkeys, and you didn't have the same ones at all, period. They could have been totally different. They're using multiple test forms because there are so many different time zones, and they want to mix and match it to avoid people communicating the content of the exam across time zones and different days of the week.
Okay. Just to let everybody know, like these meetups are super informal, so feel free to go ahead and unmute yourselves and turn yourself on video and ask your questions yourself. I hate reading questions out of the chat box. I'll do it because people ask, but please feel free to unmute yourselves and ask your questions. I'll just keep asking the ones that are currently in the chat box.
I want to say something, Angie.
Oh, sure. Hi, Carol.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, well, I mean, this is not a question, but I just wanted to say that it's good to be again in this kind of meetings. Thank you. I
You're
really
welcome.
miss, yeah.
I've missed interacting with everybody too. We actually took a quick hiatus when I was doing the 2-week boot camp, Steve. So we're now back in session, and you're one of the first ones. So.
Oh, awesome! I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carol. So we had a question here. Since the LSAT Flex allows you to be at home and not in a testing center, I feel inclined to say the questions out loud to myself. Will that raise any flags or cancel my?
That's a great question. The proctors, they don't really want you talking out loud because it could be viewed as a security issue or a security risk of some kind, meaning maybe you're talking to somebody else, maybe there's a hidden microphone somewhere, and although they don't expect that, they want to be on the safe side, so they actually don't allow that. Things are at the proctor's discretion though, so if you were quietly mouthing words to yourself, maybe it would be okay. It's up to them ultimately, but I wouldn't certainly count on being able to do that. I've asked them about that, and they said generally not.
Are there any strategy differences for the Flex test breaks versus in-person breaks? Oh, there's no breaks, right?
Correct. Yeah. So because the Flex is only 3 sections for standard administrations of it, there are no breaks at all. 3 sections back to back, and you're done. And that's actually one of the reasons why they removed sections as compared to the in-person exam, because they didn't want to have bathroom breaks. It ends up being more work for them and more money for them in terms of hiring the proctors for longer test sittings. And if you're going to the bathroom, could be a security issue. I don't really personally see how it would be, but people raise the question about it. So there are no breaks.
Hide all my answers in the bathroom.
Exactly. Someone's going to go open a book or consult it in the bathroom. They're imagining, as if that would really help you so much with a 10-minute break. So yeah, so they're not allowing bathroom breaks. But if you have extra time, different story. Obviously, if you have double time and it becomes instead of 3 sections for 2 hours, it's 3 sections for 4 hours. 4 hours, they're probably going to let you take a bathroom break at some point. But for standard administrations, no.
Got it. Is it possible to take it in a testing center if you can't take it at home? I think you said that they can do it in a hotel, right?
Yeah, so the default option in most cases is taking it at a hotel, where you book the hotel, you lay out the money for it, and then LSAC reimburses you up to $125. But I also have heard of cases where somebody might potentially take it at a law school, especially for accommodated test taking, when somebody, let's say somebody is blind and needs a reader of some kind, or they have some sort of issue, then they might provide them with an in-person testing location, obviously with distancing and potentially masks and that sort of thing, where you're taking it at a local law school, for example. But it's simply being difficult at home alone. Like, let's say it's a noisy home environment or the internet's not good. They'd probably want you doing it at a hotel.
Got it. Can they use scratch paper for the reading section?
Yeah, you can actually use scratch paper for all sections of the exam. For the Flex, you get 5 sheets of scratch paper, which is 10 pages when it's double-sided. So for 3 sections of the exam, that's probably more than enough for most people.
Is that a change? Because I thought the first administration of the Flex, they weren't allowing it.
No, they were always allowing it.
Oh,
and if you think of, I mean, logic games, right? How can you do logic games in your head? You've got to be able to diagram. So they've always allowed for the digital with the tablet, they were allowing a booklet of 12 to 14 pages, double-sided paper. So that was also roughly equivalent to what you're getting now. Because yeah, I mean, you got to be able to diagram games, and they let you use it for the other parts too.
Yeah. Oh, I thought so.
Excuse me.
I remember when you first came on a couple of months ago that we were still kind of questioning whether that would happen or not. So, okay.
A follow-up to that question, if I may.
Sure.
So I had received an email stating that some proctors in the initial examination did not actually allow scrap paper, and that was a mistake, and LSAC was going ahead and working to make those people whole. Is there any possibility that'll happen again? Additionally, I'm also interested in getting equipment and a hotel from LSAC in order to facilitate my taking the exam. How do I get the equipment? You said the hotel, I basically pay for it, and then they'll reimburse me at some point, which is fine, but how do I get the equipment?
Contact LSAC. I mean, regarding your second question, yeah, if you want equipment, if you want them to ship you a tablet, reach out to them and obviously do it sooner rather than later. So if you're doing August, which we know is a flex, if you haven't already, reach out now. For October, I would wait until they actually announce it's flex and then reach out, but do it as soon as possible so they can put you in their system and load you up. And it's the same for the hotel, by the way. So you get clearance on it and they can send you the appropriate forms to fill out and such. As for your question regarding the proctor confusion on scratch paper, yes, that's correct. For the May Flex, that was obviously the first administration. There were a lot of snafus with that administration in particular because there was not a whole lot of communication between LSAC and ProctorU regarding what was allowed, what was not allowed. And because most exams ProctorU administers don't allow scratch paper, that's their default rule in general. But obviously for the LSAT, different story. LSAT's unique in that because of logic games, you need to be able to diagram, you need to have scratch paper. So as you said, some proctors were wrong. They told people the wrong information, didn't allow them to have scratch paper when they should have. As you said, LSAC is working with them to make it whole, meaning potentially allowing retakes and such in those particular cases. As for how likely that is to happen again, I'd say probably not very likely because we've had 2 administrations since then for them to fix things. We've had the June LSAT Flex, we've had the July LSAT Flex, and from all accounts, those went much better, meaning there was not as much confusion regarding the rules. So I don't think it'll be an issue, but hey, if your proctor tells you no scratch and you say, actually it's allowed, correct them on it, ask for the supervisor, ask to show them LSAC's site with the rules where it lists that you can use scratch paper, and hopefully that should resolve it.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, of course.
What should your workspace look like in terms of paper, amounts of pencils, and water?
Yeah, great question. So you're allowed all of those things. You're allowed, again, 5 sheets of blank paper. So 5 sheets, 10 pages double-sided. All that should be cleaned. Should be clean, no writing on it at all. Typically unlined. A fun fact about scratch paper, they don't specify the size of the scratch paper. So I've heard of people using legal sized rather than 8.5 by 11. And I think for a lawyer who's looking for loopholes, that's quite appropriate to use the legal size. So I can't say that you'll definitely be allowed to use the legal size. It's up to the proctor's discretion. Maybe have 5 sheets of legal, 5 sheets of regular as a backup just in case. But if you want the space, why not? Number of pencils, I haven't heard of limits on that. I think probably 10 is more than enough, but it's really up to you. Regarding water, they have rules on it shouldn't be like an opaque clean canteen. They probably want you to use a clear bottle or a clear glass, so you're not hiding anything, I guess. And you shouldn't have things written on the bottle like contrapositives and such, but that should be fine as well. Yeah.
Can we use a mix of pens and pencils?
Generally, I think it's pencils only. It's listed on LSAC's site though.
Can you repeat the thing about the test center versus hotel?
Yeah. So if your issue taking it at home is simply it's a noisy home environment or the internet's not great, they'll probably want you to do it at a hotel instead. I would suspect that any sort of proctored in-person proctoring, like a testing center, so to speak, which would really just be a local law school where they're setting you up with a place to take it there. That's probably in cases where you have a need for accommodated test taking. Or let's say there just wasn't any hotel within a reasonable distance, which I would think is pretty unlikely for most people, but that's really the only case I could think of where they would want to go to the logistical bother of finding a place for you to take it on campus, especially since some campuses may not even be open, right?
Mm-hmm. I plan to take the LSAT in February to give myself enough time to study and complete the admissions process. Is it best to push it and do it in December to avoid a switch back to the 5-session section?
Well, so as for how much time you need to study, it's really about what you feel you need. I mean, Leslie, I remember you emailed me earlier and you were talking about a 6-month timeline. So if you feel that you need 6 months to prep for this exam, then take it whenever you think you'll be ready, regardless of format. unless you have a really strong preference for the flex versus the in-person or digital, I would say give yourself as much time as you feel you need. And I suspect, again, like I said, both October and November, I suspect there'll be flex. There actually isn't a December administration this year. It's going to be in January and February. It's nearly every month, but there are approximately 10 exams a year, and December is one of the months in which there's no exam. But I wouldn't decide when to take it based on the format. I decide based on when you'll be ready.
Could you repeat how the LSAT Flex is being scored?
Yeah, sure. So basically it's 3 scored sections, no second logical reasoning, no unscored experimental section. Each question is weighted the same. So that means that you have approximately 75 questions, all weighted equally. And unlike the previous LSAT where logical reasoning then got roughly half the weight, now it's got approximately 1/3 of the weight. So each question matters more, and reading comprehension has the plurality or the most questions on that exam.
Do you have any other tips or advice, Steve?
I do, Angie, actually. You were asking earlier about any issues that have happened with the flex administrations. And I talked about, and Patrick brought up the proctors not knowing the rules regarding scratch paper. I talked about internet connectivity issues. There's one other thing I should mention, which is that for the July LSAT Flex, some folks may have heard that 1% of tests were lost with that administration, meaning there was some sort of data corruption when transmitting the information from ProctorU to LSAC. 1% of people was approximately 120 test takers whose results were lost due to data corruption issues. Obviously, that's a disaster for those people, even if it's a relatively small number out of the 12,000 or so who took that test. Now, LSAC brought in Microsoft to look at the data and see if there was a way to recover the scores. And a lot of them were able to be recovered. But in the process, some people's scores came back much lower than they should have been.
Oh, no.
Meaning they
That's
dropped
terrible.
30, 40, 50 points.
Oh, my God.
But there was obviously a mistake in the score that was recovered, so to speak, because it wasn't the actual score. What happened was some sections were entirely lost, or they were mixed up. Like they took your results for section 1 and section 2 and flipped them around. So obviously then most questions that ended up being wrong, the ones that were right would have been simply by chance.
Oh, my God.
In most of those cases, they fixed it, but there was obviously a lot of stress for those involved. I don't expect this to ever happen again. LSAC obviously takes it very seriously. And of course, that has an impact on the integrity of the exam results. So I don't think it'll happen. I don't want people to worry too much about this, but folks should be aware. As for what you can do proactively, I would say track your results. Track your practice test results and screenshot them, email to yourself, keep a log so that on the very, very tiny chance this happened to you and that this ever happened again, you would be able to say to LSAC, hey, look, here are all my results in Law Hub, or here are all my results in Khan Academy. I've tracked all of them for the past month or two, and my average test score is in the 160s or the 170s, or even the high 150s, whatever it is. So then you could say, you're giving me a 133. I question the integrity of this. I want you to look into it. I want you to see if maybe you mixed up the results. And that way, at least they can cancel your score altogether. So it's not on record, because obviously you don't want that score to be on record, or at least they can look into it and potentially fix it. So again, highly unlikely this would ever happen again. And even if so, that it would happen to you, but good to be prepared and good to have all the evidence to bring them if necessary.
How far in advance did you book the hotel room for the August LSAT? They emailed LSAC, but they're waiting to hear back from them.
Well, I would say as soon as you schedule a time, a day and a time, I would book it then. I mean, that really is related more, I think, to the availability of hotels in your area than anything with LSAC in particular. But good to have it locked in.
Yeah, I mean, August is coming up. So,
yeah, I mean, for the August LSAT, that's really soon.
So, like, the August LSAT is soon. So I would get that hotel now.
Yeah.
I would ask them, like, about their Wi-Fi and make sure that all of their internet connection is good. I mean, it depends on where you live, of course. If you're in a major city, you might be able to have hotels aplenty. But if you're in a small city, you may really, really want to check and get that.
That's a great idea, Angie. One other thing I'll add, actually, that makes me think of this, which is that maybe you want to use an Ethernet connection, so a wired, plugged-in internet connection, rather than simply relying on Wi-Fi. And obviously, some devices don't even have Ethernet, like the new MacBooks don't have an Ethernet plug. Mine doesn't. I have to use an adapter in a separate box and everything to plug in. But when I'm on a video call like this, I want to be plugged in to ensure that if there's any internet issues, at least it isn't on my end to maximize how smooth everything is. So look at the hotel's reviews, see if their Wi-Fi is good versus being spotty. You could look on maybe Yelp or TripAdvisor or hotels.com, wherever you look at hotel reviews, and then call the hotel and see if they have wired Ethernet connections in their rooms, and maybe choose a hotel based on that. And if you don't have an Ethernet connection or a plug on your computer, get an adapter so you can plug in and ensure a smooth situation. Because the LSAT being so strictly timed and proctors not always knowing everything, you want to avoid any issues that could arise, and being plugged in is obviously safer there.
Yeah, I also was reading on LSAT's website just now, for anybody who's taking the August LSAT, you were supposed to let LSAC know if you need a loaner device by this past Sunday. So if you haven't done that already, like, you need to do that ASAP. And I don't know if they can accommodate you, but you need to, like, let them know now. So what's the total time window for taking the LSAT?
So in terms of logging in and everything, well, the Flex itself is 3 35-minute sections. So that's approximately 2 hours. Now, you've also got logging in time. As you said, you've got the proctor taking over your computer and making sure that everything else is closed, so there's no other windows or apps open on the computer. They're making sure the security setup is good. There may occasionally, with some administrations, there were wait times for proctors, meaning the proctors were still finishing up other tests, and so there was a backlog. So you had to wait a little bit before signing on. So if your test is scheduled for 2 o'clock, don't assume that you're going to start at 2:01. You might not start till 2:10, 2:15, 2:20. So I would allow at least 3 to 4 hours, meaning don't have anything else booked that afternoon if you're taking it in the afternoon. Don't assume that it's going to go smoothly. So try to pick a time when you have more space.
Got it. If I haven't paid for the score view, how can I see my score?
So what I was referring to earlier was score preview, meaning you get to see your score before deciding whether to cancel. Without score preview, you get your score back. It is what it is. If you want to cancel your score, you have to cancel it before even knowing what it is. And you have 6 calendar days to cancel before the score is locked in and it's going to be released, and it'll be whatever it is. Now, again, it's not a huge deal to have a low score on record because you can always retake. And with very few exceptions, law schools don't average multiple scores. They only take or consider the highest. So it wouldn't be a big deal to have a lower score on record than you wanted. But whether you do score preview or not, you will still get back your score approximately 2 to 3 weeks later. And for the August...
Is there a fee to cancel, or do you just lose the amount of the test?
There's no fee to cancel. Basically, that just means that you had a dry run, you sat for the exam, you took it, but without score preview and you cancel, you don't get to see your results. But regardless, if you do decide to keep your score, then you get it back approximately 2 to 3 weeks later. And for the August LSAT Flex, LSAC anticipates releasing scores on Friday, September 18th at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Got it. In the Law Hub subscription you mentioned, can they take, or how many practice tests are you allowed access?
There are over 60 exams on Law Hub. So over 60, it's approximately exams 19 through 88, more or less.
And they missed the bit where you talked about how you can take tests similarly structured to the Flex.
Yeah, so basically use self-paced mode on Law Hub and skip one of the logical reasoning sections.
Got it. Is it better to join Law Hub closer to your test date or immediately?
Well, at the moment, Law Hub is basically 1 year of access for $99. So I would join now. If you're taking it 6 months from now, join now because you're going to be paying for a year anyway. I've actually reached out to them about suggesting maybe they offer different lengths of subscriptions because not everybody wants a year. Like, why not offer people 6 months of access for a lower price, or 3 months for even less, or 1 month only, or maybe offering not paying for all 60 exams, but paying for fewer exams if you don't need all 60 plus. But I think that that's farther out where they might make those sorts of offer those sorts of options and flexibility. But for now, they just wanted to get something out.
What are some prohibited items for the test?
Good question. So first of all, you can't have a second monitor. There's no dual monitor setups allowed. I know some people's setups, they have that in their bedroom or their office or whatever. You can't do that. You can't have any books out. So all books should be put away. Nothing else should be open in your room. There shouldn't be any other people around in that room. So they'll have you do a scan of your room, like a panoramic scan of the room. They'll even have you use your phone as a mirror to show that there's nothing taped to your monitor on the side, like no cheat sheets or anything. So you basically want the room to be empty and clean and clear. So clean up your desk, put everything in a box. If you have a messy desk, put all of that aside, have nobody in the background, nothing else suspicious in the background. You are allowed to have your pet with you though. So that's kind of cool. You could take the test with your dog or cat as long as they don't make too much noise.
I need my emotional support animal.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And what if you need headphones, earplugs, or earbuds?
None of that's allowed.
I have a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the room, like I was planning on taking it in like a home office setup that we have, but it's a room with like a lot of bookshelves and things like that. Is that allowed, or do I have to find a room like that's basically completely empty?
I would think that bookshelves are fine. Just you don't want books to be open. Like you don't want to give the appearance that you could be looking at a resource during the exam, but simply having bookshelves in the background is totally fine.
Okay.
I wouldn't think that'd be an issue at all.
Question: has anything changed as far as any sort of accommodations? I have a friend that's planning on taking it, and she said she needed accommodations, but she wasn't sure like if anything has changed with the Flex.
No, the good news is that whatever accommodations you have for the regular, you also have for the Flex. So if you have extra time, like time and a half or double time, that'll be the same. For a blind test taker, if you have a reader or Braille, they'll provide you with the same, even if that requires doing it in person. Even during COVID, they will make that right for you. They want it. They're committed to accessibility. And so they're going to give people the same accommodations.
If you're still on the fence on whether you should wait until there's a regular LSAT versus the current LSAT Flex, what is your advice to people? Like if they're like, I could apply this year or next year or maybe even the year after, and I'm not sure if I want to take it as is right now or if I want to take it when it's the traditional LSAT?
Yeah, it's a good question. I know a lot of folks have a strong preference one way or the other, but the thing is we don't really know how long Flex is going to go on for. I mean, I could see them doing Flex forever potentially. And with each administration, they get better and better at doing it properly and dealing with ProctorU and informing the proctors of what's allowed, about the rules and such. And there are a lot of logistical benefits to doing the Flex. Like they don't have to book testing centers. They don't have to hire in-person proctors. They don't have to ship tablets or booklets around. I mean, I mentioned the July LSAT Flex data corruption with certain small percentage of scores, but they've lost booklets in the past as well with very limited cases of this, but shipping via UPS, some booklets got lost one time. And if there's inclement weather, like a snowstorm, testing centers would be closed, or there was a hurricane, test centers were closed. So the in-person has some potential issues as well. So whether it'll be Flex long-term or not, I can't necessarily say, but given all that uncertainty, I wouldn't choose when to take the LSAT or when to apply to law school based on things being in person or online. Prep focusing on the content of the exam, like studying grouping logic games or necessary assumption logical reasoning questions, whatever it is. Focus on the content and focus on the highest possible accuracy, then simulate test day accordingly.
Yeah, I guess I was more wondering if you know yourself as a test taker and you don't have the endurance to do like the full length LSAT, and maybe you want the shorter version because your accuracy is just way higher when you don't need that stamina for the extra section, versus like some people are like, no, I would rather have the extra section, that's the extra section that I do well, or if there's any strategy behind it.
Well, that's a fair question. Yeah. So as for the endurance aspect, yeah, I mean, definitely 3 sections is shorter, endurance less of a factor, probably more pleasant for most people. So if you could be ready by November, I would say aim for November, which is, as we speak, about 3 months from now. I think it's highly likely that will be a Flex. So if you want Flex, maybe go for November. But I could still see it being Flex in January too. If you really hate the idea of Flex, then you could hold off. But who knows? I mean, January could be Flex, February could be Flex. If we really knew there's going to be a COVID vaccine that works by end of the calendar year, next year would be in person, then I would say maybe hold off till then if you prefer the in-person 5 section and you don't want it to be online, but we can't really say. So I would really remove the format entirely from the decision-making process. Just focus on the content.
Okay. Jenna, did you want to ask your question or do you want me to ask it?
I did. Actually, I have two now. So the one I typed was, with the Flex, do you choose the day and time that works best for you? And then also with the Law Hub subscription that you said that's $99, is the setup, you said self-time, but I was wondering, is there a way to practice where the structure is the exact same as the Flex, just to be comfortable with like what it looks like as far as multiple choice or how to select, just so I'm not wasting any time getting to know the system on test day?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So with choosing day and time, you do get a range of options. So typically there is an option to choose a weekday versus a weekend day, like a Sunday versus a Monday. And you have an entire range of times as well. So you could choose any time from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. start times Eastern time. So it's a pretty wide range if you're a morning person versus afternoon versus evening. You can choose any time across that spectrum in 20-minute increments. So you do get to choose within a range. Then for the format, although Law Hub is 4 sections, not 3, otherwise the software is identical. So the highlighting annotation tool, the underlining, multiple choice, navigation bar, countdown timer, all that's exactly the same. So you can practice with that.
Okay, excellent. And the only way to practice that with that same exact format is by having a subscription. That's the only platform that offers the same layout, correct?
Correct. Like, so even Khan Academy or any of the prep companies, they have online LSATs, but for some reason, LSAC actually is not permitting anybody to create an identical replica of the exact system. So other systems will always look different in some way. Law Hub is the only one that is identical to what you'll do on test day. Somebody mentioned Law Hub offering some free tests also. And yeah, they do. So they offer what they call official LSAT prep. You get exams 71 and 73 for free. So those are from 2014 approximately. So they're pretty recent exams. And without even paying anything, you get those 2 exams in the Flex format, or at least the online digital format. And then Khan Academy has 10 or so, but they're not in the same exact format. But there are a handful of exams available for free out there.
Do you select the time that you would want to take the exam at the time of sign up, or at some point after sign up, but before the?
It's after sign up, but before administration. So you could have registered for the August LSAT a month ago if you wanted to, but they actually still haven't even opened up scheduling yet. So the exam is about 2.5 weeks from now. They still haven't opened up scheduling for days and times yet. I expect they will any day now, but they haven't yet. And by the way, when they do, there's actually a way to schedule early. Do you want to hear how?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little secret for all of you. And this worked for all the previous LSAT Flex administrations, by the way. So like I said, you don't create your account on ProctorU. Let LSAC do it. They create an account for you. And the day of scheduling, so they'll open up scheduling let's say they open it up at 12 p.m. or 9 a.m. You could sign up shortly after midnight, even if they haven't told you to yet. They'll announce sign up is going to be Friday morning, let's say. If you stay up late Thursday night after midnight, you may be able to log in. You simply try to log into ProctorU with your LSAC registered email account. Click Forgot Password. It will email you and let you reset your password on ProctorU. And so maybe at 1 a.m., you can go on and have all the times available that you want. Don't feel like you need to do this because there are a wide range of times, and it's not like everybody knows this trick, but you'll be able to get your time locked in. That at least has worked for the May Flex, the June Flex, and the July Flex. So those of you taking August, keep an eye out for LSAC announcing when scheduling will open, and then you could do it several hours before.
Are the exams in Law Hub labeled as pre-test from past administrations?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. So they're all numbered prep tests. And so there are 89 numbered prep tests released, as well as a handful that are unnumbered. And the ones on Law Hub, like I said, they're approximately exams 19 through 88, with some missing from there, but that's the general range. And so each one has an accompanying month and year associated. And so it'll say like, this is from June 2014, or this is from December 2013. So, and by the way, in my study guide, you mentioned you're using my study guide, I mentioned them by prep test number. And so Law Hub also mentioned by prep test number. So we're currently at 89, which was the November 2019 LSAT, since none were released this year because of them being Flex. So yeah, you can match them up very easily. Everyone numbers them the same way.
Yeah, so you can buy 10 actual tests in digital format. How do those differ from the LSAT Flex?
Well, so the Flex is 3 sections, not 4, but otherwise they're the same. One difference is that on Law Hub, they mixed up the section numberings, which is unfortunately kind of confusing. They put logic games always as section 1, reading comp always as section number 4, but it's the exact same content. They just switched the order for some reason.
Is it competitive to select the time that you want to take the exam? Like, do they fill up fast?
I can't make any promises, but I would expect that if you sign up within a couple of hours of it scheduling opening up, you'll probably be able to pick roughly any time you want. Like maybe 2 o'clock isn't available, but 2:20 is available. Hopefully that still works for you. So within a range, you'll probably have a good pick there. But if you wait 3 days, I imagine you'll have far more limited options. But it's not crazy competitive. Yeah, sure. Well, I'll put those resource links in the chat again. Again, I got the Flex FAQ, the Flex playlist on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel. I've got an easy LSAT cheat sheet PDF download, and as well as a link to all my different resources. And so definitely educate yourself on the Flex, whether you're taking the August in 2.5 weeks, or you may be taking it 2 to 3 months from now or beyond. But just know again that although you should obviously know the format of the test you'll be taking, don't spend too much time obsessing over this. The content, of course, matters far more. So instead of focusing only on the format, of course, learn the basics of games, reasoning, reading comp, and of course, I cover those extensively on the LSAT Unplugged YouTube channel, the podcast, the LSAT blog, as well as far more inside my courses. And I'm running live online classes every week. I used to do 2 to 4 classes a month. Now I'm doing 2 to 4 per week due to COVID. More people are showing up, people are online, people are committing themselves to the process. And so if you have extra time available during COVID, really make use of it to maximize your LSAT potential. There's a lot that you can do during this time to get the highest score possible. And it is the number one factor in the admission process. So give it the time it deserves. And Angie, I just want to thank you for having me. And I want to thank you as well for sharing your insights on pre-law career networking and mentoring for my students. I remember I had you back for my course students a little while back, and the insights you shared were just so valuable. And I know that you're going to be doing another one for my students in a week or so, and I'm excited to have you back.
Yeah, me too.